Hello, America, world, and every boy, girl. I not press the button that says, "Is this made for kids?" This is made for everybody. But if there are kids, you have to participate through your parents or legal guardian. This is a YouTube ground collaboration video outline, and it's themed about a unfolding series of instances and events that collaborate, you know, to make the world um, reveal means that are right there anyway. In other words, that's the subject about how to reveal where everyone agrees and where everyone disagrees. It's not been treated honestly. And where and how, for example, people, there are, the journalism has been told to lie. They have rights to lie, but they have been using that where they don't have the right to lie as their roles with everyone else, and then further, even as their interbranch identities kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, final act of progressive lies, and self value lie progressions, and where relevant, I would have people where and how people at each age are forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, made only capable of self valuing finite details left out because of where and how relevant are those collusions with areas of and locations, areas and states everywhere the species body is, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the natures of criminal insidiousness of the branches of government and of the exception nature tied to them, and of the insidiousness of people's opinions A through Z. Otherwise, they attach to those fake words, fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. This is relevant too, and as part of the answers, and to where and to how the science is bridged, and there means hyper evidential to demonstrate it since before we were found. I mean, before our founders were born, but this has not been recorded. Um, manifest properly where it is syntactically manifest with judgment of people A through Z, formally and informally, because that's an array originally and still that was employed to blame other things, others, ourselves, as the foundation of what is blaming other things, others, ourselves for the evils that are part of history than the real causes, and using all truths that about and demonstration of logic, how getting we're doing that as styles of logic, styles of evidence treatments that are shared. Like, for example, they cannot afford that which is hyper evidentially recorded. For example, our founding parents actually communicated for us to demonstrate about how color treatments were forged by collusions between countries individually grouped and together. But since before our founders were born here and in other modern countries, already modern countries had been forced in defenses of themselves, simultaneously also collusions as those defenses as fact treatment nature, uses of the sciences and how humanity is bound by nature itself, individual grouped in together, species, body, of volume, slash as science, which is everything at once, is in demonstration that and how the identity of the hyper simultaneous, which is distinct from everything at once, because part of a complete nature, as we'll examine. there is the better than perfect demonstration of this being the perfect words, better than perfect words, to understand each identity of volume, how it shares one identity of volume. So each individual body of life is a number of distinct identities of volume. There are five distinct identities of sequence nature, bound by that. The value of the identity semi-nature relationship to the identity. That is all things at once. And that things could be invented from it within this. But if they are invented, we're trying to be systems other than its own, it only demonstrates negative value in each progressions, acts, and natures. And exceptions in exception nature. Our founders to left us to demonstrate how they were employed, a part of a torture method that involved the slavery of themselves, sickly distinctly from the rest of the humanity, sickly distinctly forced syntactically to defend themselves and or to refer to themselves and or to value their difference applied now syntactically to value nature systems tactical ulterior from the one we are. Where and how that there are proofs that before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, everyone self-valued. How there is an identity of hyper simultaneous, a distinct identity of simultaneous. That is one of the things that that is the only thing that is conjunction to all other things. Also discernible because the only increasing value of its identity of relationship to itself. And as each volume, identity of volume, has a distinct identity of relationship to itself. It comes also with this one. That also, in other words, has relativity to Earth's a special difference. And this is where and how. We could be systems other, but it goes with the demonstration of force, space, nature transfer is demonstrated. So there's a complete syntactical possession of people's treatments over positive and negative based on how each age of campus, each nature of campus is recorded effectively maintained. Victims of a certain type of nature and simultaneously hyper victims of a certain type of nature. For example, whoever's going to decide to go into a location, job, or title, from off all locations, there are police forms, foreign and domestic, already being and having been involved with blaming other things, others, or on blaming selves for what a breaching method that came since before modern countries individually grouped and together as they were in our defended and self-valued syntactically. And so we have serious threats regarding, in every country, everywhere we are, regarding how, for example, our founders left us to discern the difference between revolution and war, and exceptions in exception nature, where and how applied. See, but this is also where and how they had them counter things like criminal insidiousness, an identity of a breaching method. Therefore, which, for example, which I'm not a lawyer, but we need to refer to as lawyers are also recorded how uses of predicate acts methods and tactically induced physical delusions relevant to uses of databases with a vertical and horizontal um, roles with offensive sequence values, time values, and other fact nature quality aspects in nature relevant to and where and how. It's simply having black pupils and whites of eyes and understanding that breaching method against Native Americans to know simply to simultaneously how it was is blamed on other things, others, or ourselves, and where and how that is self-valued is in the logic of any human body that speaks. That leaves out what science itself needs to demonstrates we need to discern as the hyper native, pure identity of volume, the identity of the hyper simultaneous. That's one of the things it is constantly. Is hyper native pure, and per its relevance, its relativity to logic. So there are a number of videos we could do. For example, with the identity of no, this is not just for the Burroughs book. Evolution science should only feel like games, and or else we should sense it. For example, but the breaching method inherited self-valued from semi-ancient times. It employed itself self-value without anybody realizing, where it has each individual forbid use of the finite, where and how has a conjunction to the mind, where and how is and how, where and as and how. The mind is value as 1/3/5 distinct identities of sequence/simultaneous nature. As the value of sequence as it actually was true. And that means not using truths or valuing truths used or having been used as lies or to a screen. True lies with that and or tactical delusions too, with the logic reliant upon what is said truth. See, because there is a difference between hyper truth and truth that is needed to be discerned in the existence of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments are proof of this. And one of the things slavery is about, for example, are collusions between strangers involved with the defenses of criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments and of identity treatments simultaneously, and value treatments the same way. Know how with the maths and with the science and with computers how they have how value has relativity to what is positive and to negative, and to identity /IES. See, this is a hypervolume science and theorem itself as the proof. So my name is Anthony Wall, YouTuber Anthony Wall here. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a licensed journalist. And you know, but and you're not supposed to record the government And there are contexts where it was implied or communicated that we should record the government. But just to make sure, I had them record themselves. There are only 3 branches of government, and there are exceptions in nature tied to them, as each location, area, and state. Everywhere the species body of volume is known, now long abridged, recorded self-value confessed, long abridged. Only the extent of this is debatable, but how and why people were capable of getting away so long with denying the only increasing value of understanding that and how the course of black pupils and of whites of eyes abridged. And that as that course that is the hyper-native pure, so capable of not being Native American or not, understanding the only increasing value of that difference as Native American. And regardless, in other words, how the tribes, ones that can't speak for our states, our locations, areas, and states, the way our founders were not allowed to speak, but found a way to communicate they wanted us to speak for them. Ones who cannot communicate about that or value the significance of that. So they have to restrict conversations to interbranch locations where subject treatments leave out significant details. For example, roles with juxtaposed natures of organized crime against each age of fact treatment nature, consciously maintained, propagated, juxtaposed, tactically juxtaposed. Every single place there are the identities of the sciences are manifest, individually grouped and together. How do I know this? Because the breaching method of that American history and that other countries' histories is a breaching method that used every name at every single location and their identity of relativity. No, to a database relationship that since before computers also was involved with the preservation of the republic for which we stand and of means to have had semi-nature defenses and preservation of the value and of the nature of yin yang and of alpha and omega. Yin yang and alpha and omega more probably and more practically are cultural evidences and demonstration that the ancients used them together to teach about and to use how and why nature has manifest. Actually, and properly, in other words, why and how, as the species body of volume, as yin yang is about, for example, as the body of is also about space/existence. Yin yang, in other words, that's one. How they are one. We are one volume. So yin yang can never part. Just like the value of the species body of volume, while we are that simultaneously. We are an identity of simultaneous nature that we can only control and or access, rather, the power/might of. And part of being able to do that is understanding that only it and its identity of relationship to itself that is positive can properly, without having negative value nature progressions, acts and natures demonstrated other, access and B, that which is that which can properly align with what is positive to the finite details. Therefore, no to individuals. And we're exceptions in exception nature, for example, inherent to the logic, and as the real value of the nature of the logic of the political parties, of the subject's treatments, simultaneously, insidiously positive and negative, where and how. A breaching method measures and maintains this. Blamed on other things other than ourselves, where it has roles with where and how it sustained roles with people's motivations for where and how they have roles with the hundreds of people going before courts each day and or not. See, in courts they make outcomes that are right and that are wrong. But you could have the right outcome and still get things wrong. And that still be collusions with the crime scenes relevant, whether realized or not, too. Because the breaching method was left out by logic. And there were and are conscious, measured and maintained uses of roles with that, of natures with roles with that. That's natures of people online who pretend their passions and emotions about why they're being nice or communicating about how or why they like the sensibilities of others. For example, the news, the journalists are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They're told to pretend other, but simultaneously, consciously, they know they have been changing what people say, and have been attaching people to fake locations, fake words. Where and how time treatments were one of the ways they have gotten away with. Sick, fact, cheaply nature oriented. Data, time, other qualities of fact, cheaply nature, aspects of fact, cheaply nature, and identity treatments. Predicate acts, methods of them, and natures and means to get away with it and keep the real motivations blamed on those juxtaposed. To, for example, what everyone is requesting. Forgiveness is because also because people who were speaking for the law, if we're going to speak for it unabridged, as we were directed to by our founders, where and how they had free speech, but only through a method that had to simultaneously entertain and speak using and defend uses of logic that they would not have entertained. Logic even entertaining the logic of ones with slavery. People say, oh, the founders have roles with slavery. Our founders told us to get the Constitution unabridged, to have the torture method that goes with slavery too, and to have it explained to how it was against every single person, sickly distinctly. They have they have uses of the Harriet Beecher Stowe in the house, in the Mark Twain house, for example, in Hartford, Connecticut, which has and so will take further hyperconjunction to our videos, because this is also. They have, for example, too, they have the phenomenon of truths where they have truths used for lies. They have readings of statutes regarding uses of the words like reality. Now, this is a reality show that you have to understand also. In other words, there are predicate acts methods in legal cases and the motivations and natures that are juxtaposed with the breaching method, where and how witch trials became and was a subject juxtaposed with the slavery of our founders, which is measured and maintained by a breaching method that shows all identities of known sophistication on the ground slash non-sophistication too, from the interbranch to the overt criminal enterprises, private ones. They're recorded how kept needing the same, hide the same sequence shifts, final act of progressive lives together. Roles with offensive data, evidence perception, fact, human nature, quality perception, identity perception, racketeering, worse than war crimes. That's the subject when you bring up. One of the ways they got away with this, here's another ways they use truth for lies. Black and white legal identities involved with the torture slash slavery method with the laws and with database relationships and what people were allowed to speak about. In other words, they weren't allowed to speak against slavery or they were going to be hurt too. Everyone was a sickly, distinctly enslaved. And measured and maintained was the phenomenon of that ignored. And uses of what they call evidence treatments. For example, how they would say, oh, look, it says that only white people are free. And then so people will call themselves white. And so the whole bunch of different countries that there's no such thing as black and white, except for black pupils, whites of eyes. There are a whole bunch of countries that were themselves already abridged slavery. All exceptions in exception nature. For example, all natures of wealth have not afforded means to even fathom building or anyone fathom building a way out of that tactically denatured as the suburbs and the design since before our founders were born, before cars, let alone cranes, all the means. So, in other words, we have to address where and how mandated laws prevented at all locations and how others prevented but gotten away with being and having been pretended offensively. One of the ways, there are only 3 branches of government. There are only, so many natures of criminal insidiousness that we need to, distinct natures of criminal insidiousness that we need to list and be aware of simultaneously, to use as means simultaneously to observe. The breaching method and conscious roles with that as actually recorded. For example, when people blame other things, others, or selves for what caused Jim Crow laws, even when right, especially if someone doesn't even know what Jim Crow laws is, especially how they describe it, how they get away with describing it, and you're not describing it. Whether someone did homework or not is used to measure and maintain by our own, sickly distinctly from a breaching method that shows them needs to measure, needs to play tricks with that, and with their opinion, with people's opinions that are simultaneously incapable. There are logic and natures that are simultaneously incapable of defending that and of affording discernment of the actual quality and substance of their communications with investigators and investigations, at social and at formal locations too, though. I mean, at formal and at formal locations and at any other location and at their homes too. Because people, this breaching method was right and effectively made people speak for integrity, appearance of justice that never were. And so increasingly they value criminal insidiousness natures of appearances of justice as simultaneously as breaching screen tools, natures. And this is where criminal insidiousness is being and having been applied as a weapon against each age of fact, treatment nature simultaneously, sickly, distinctly. Immediately relevant to the people stacking in poverty is the people stacking in elderly homes. This is a vertical and horizontal, worse than criminal incompetence with every positive value treatment. Measured and maintained by a breaching method is worse than criminal incompetence pseudo-sophistication as the identities that spoke for and used words like security at Washington, D.C., leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. And treatments of January 6 are recorded consciously being and having been used to hide collusions where and how Connecticut news media has and has had roles on off Central Connecticut State University with FBI leaderships and other agencies and their family members and intimate ties in a whole bunch of different countries involved with them on and off shopping centers, on and off malls, involved on and off campuses with planting evidences and planting roles with crime methods relevant where and how time treatments and other fact treatment nature racketeering is being and having been perpetrated through interbranch locations and through their conjunctions with the private locations associated with them too. The exceptions also demonstrate that the campuses that are providing the leaderships of all the exceptions and exception nature that are not the government but private, they have means by uses of their identity, and especially regarding where it is relative, where their identities were left and are left. So, designed by and for a breaching method, while simultaneously that was left entrenched because where and how we are quality as fact treatment nature was left the possession of a measuring and maintaining method that also had been sustained so effectively to maintain each modern country individually grouped and together, self-valued uses of laws as database relationships, as identities of conjunction to all identity of the ground locations, as criminal insidiousness, tactical ulterior, from what could defend its criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, negative treatments simultaneously, and identity treatments. There was a Joe Aiello who made exceptions pretending to know me real quick. I don't know what they said. I only had manners with him one time. Most people would have made fun of him, which they do things, tricks like that, so they make people the truth. They use truths for lies. Because there are people involved with wire crimes with Wethersfield police and with mayors. And that involves uses of the side entrances to parks and of the intercities and of the neighbors of kids and of their own homes, where and how abuses of them involves uses of sustained distinct natures of organized crime and of abuses of each age of fact treatment nature, sickly distinctly, overtly / insidiously, So this video is about, in other words, things that are negative. There's a difference between making a positive out of negative, that is a criminal insidiousness nature is all positive. This is relevant to where and to how they set the suburbs tactically denatured, reliant upon mass farming, let alone the cities of the world, since before cars. And you don't leave out, and you have to understand first. And then, because it's hyper additional too, and with this, as is a breaching method, making that increasingly relevant because it's hyper invisible but still discernible. An identity of negative value progression, at least. If anyone wants to deny that, their logic will have inherent active progressive demonstrations of it being true as well, as does the logic of anyone who denies the significance of having black pupils and whites of eyes. Knowing the history of America, what they did to Native Americans, to colonists, and now to everyone, and hyper additionally to Native Americans further as Americans still. There was a question asked about who thinks the FBI is integrity or not on Congress. I don't know which channel it was on. They were making treatments of the human identity as the name Cherokee. And so, whether people say anything or nothing, it is discerned. There are a whole bunch of ways to discern criminally foreign influence uses of the identity of the FBI. For example, conjunctive simultaneously with that, already before that, the FBI had and has recorded conscious means to discern their roles with predicate acts and cases against American citizens. Therefore, with illusions at crime scenes, no more and more than there are even towns in our streets in our cities, not by accident. There were reported 30 shootings in Hartford this year alone. So, in other words, the great campuses, all campuses are great. Now, what they do is have a pseudo sophistication, a pseudo narrative on morality, per uses of descriptions of behavior that left out and leave out what came first as natures that are relevant as value here. Because this is also the FBI involved with juxtaposed conscious uses of juxtaposed distinct natures of abuses of each age and of remote uses of black/white female judges and male judges distinctly used as victim predators, hyper victim predators, per how lied to, per relevant means to discern, recorded criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes, relevant where and how, for example, people need to pretend offensively with passions and emotions to be against our founders. Now, where and how people would do that and actually believe that forgiveness is for such a thing, because the fault there is the education. See, in other words, but it's everyone with roles, because differential criminal foreign influence. There's a breaching method that no one wanted to be roles with. No one wanted to have roles with slavery because you're instantly a slave. All exceptions, exception nature that, like, for example, you have the high roles countering it. So you had to leave records that would, or had the potential to be used as means to steal. what you have to actually left to communicate to your people, as James Madison, for example, as Marbury versus Madison itself, is an identity of the appearance of justice, because it is justice, always, not denying the slightest exceptions. Evolution science only feels like games because it uses the phenomenon of how and of why. The sciences share an identity individually grouped and together, just like everything else: cell, nuclear, cell, body, cell wall. Every species, individuals of the species, grouped, sexes, and species, body, of volume. Yin yang and alpha and omega go together regarding exception nature. And in summary, that's one of the things these distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature are constantly. And where there are things variably, it is coupled with the value of the Earth's special difference. For example, relevant to where and to how. Relevant to many questions as answer, as a means to the answers too. So the collaboration for the YouTube ground videos is going to be a collaboration with the world. With, in other words, and we're going to assign. There's a difference between having a transparent organization, because know how criminal insidiousness is transparent too. We have to with subject treatments. There are fact treatment nature oriented predicate acts and methods of them, relevant to where and to how torture is a subject manifest, and relevant to where and to how that which is actually that which is hyper evidential demonstrates that subject treatments of torture, how they got away with keeping it blamed on other things, others, ourselves, where and how torture has remained, where and how methods of and natures of slavery have remained. For example, as that demonstrated by those who blame our founders for slavery, leaving out the counter extortion of our founders, leaving out how slavery was left entrenched North America, northern colonies and southern colonies as their state, and northern states and southern states. The exceptions are in demonstration of the same thing, because we left out. See, George Washington said he could tell no lies. In other words, they're blaming him for slavery. He said to get the Constitution unabridged. He said go with Madison's plan. Everything else he said was forced by people forcing the slavery of himself. Fact treatment nature wise. Exception nature treatment wise. That's why they have everyone sickly distinctly slaves too, to measure and maintain. Other things, others, ourselves, blamed for what it caused, the breaching method that already had complete syntactical possession of countries, individual grouped and together. Nature shows us recorded that and how they were now self-valued individuals, grouped and together. Names treatments where we are fact treatment nature, tactical terrier, as systems tactical terrier, from that one revealed as that which leads syntactical answers, which leads as science that does not use theory. See, it's a magic trick. While they're telling people that science So they have the public sphere used as I've been using that phrase since I was a kid too, by the way. They tell people that to pretend they don't understand people on a mass scale, per where and how employed. Criminal and insidiousness natures of theater, positive and negative treatments go with identities of logic treatments where people pretend that they're legitimately about being calm or being mad regarding, for example, where and how the natural function and functioning of humanity has been converted from the hypernative system to these. Therefore, where our natural differences have remained observably functional to a breaching method, a hyperarchetypal criminal enterprise, if you will, an identity of negative value nature progression, acts and natures, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness natures, like wrongdoers and like wrongdoing itself. These things are in demonstration. So this breaching method knew effectively, correctly, that human countries would have to counter as fact-treating nature, as identities of the science individually grouped and together, forced to use and to value uses of their identities individually grouped and together, tactical ulterior from how by nature, which is relevant. For example, when you bring up a subject like slavery, subject/s like slavery, the identity that the sciences share is observable this way. But we have this obfuscated through the sciences, where and how they had effectively maintained conscious roles with natures of organized crime at each age of fact should be nature sickly distinctly. And that forced delay. Once you delay that, now you have locations and the locations next to them, self-valued, reliant needs per illusions relevant to where and to how, simultaneously, overtly / insidiously. Sick identities of sciences present voices and fact treatments and fact treatment nature got away with pretending other as a certain type of adult that was child abused this way. And partially in great is we need to address where and how phrases like criminal insidiousness have not been used with each age of fact treatment nature, where subjects like slavery have to be addressed. From the youngest ages, you can understand what criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments are. And wherever there is a positive or negative treatment, there is an identity treatment. Wherever there is a value treatment, there is a positive and negative treatment. Simultaneously, so you could discern identity's course. Again, that which all these other courses formerly only heard are tactical ulterior from individually grouped and together. Individually, where and how. What's actually recorded is effectively how a fraud breaching employee identity of positive treatment, in other words, and of negative treatments, is that only allowed manifest through the descriptions of the voices of each modern country. You cannot afford the revelations that come from the short words, proper. For example, regarding there is relevance to understanding how there are criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, not just negative treatments, like predicate acts, like criminal, like wrongdoers, you like killers, including as armies, not blaming the members of service who came through these 6 schools. You could discern that and how, since before cars were even born, the suburbs were designed. That is means to discern that and how we don't have capable security. We don't have fact-cheap nature security. The FBI is recorded conscious that they communicate other than they pretend. They self-value just because there's a rule, we don't do it. Just means they do that stuff all overtly. Leading up to and in a 2006 district court case in Connecticut, there are people on and off Fox Connecticut News and on and off WFSB who also had roles with predicate acts on and off campuses, like little magic tricks behind the backs of strangers. And they even make fake exceptions by walking by people. Relevant to timed uses of corners of buildings and of streets, where identity thefts and frauds and slanders are bound, where and how non-distinctly everyone is has been blaming other things, others ourselves, where everyone stayed victims to what is recorded. These are not our means. These are not means to honestly describe how or why people agree or not. Every identity, the ground, location, even the branches of government are recorded how having been used remotely to make time treatments, fact treatments, qualities, aspects in nature itself that can't defend itself and afford properly. Proper uses of phrases like criminal insidiousness. Proper uses of words like delusions. We have a whole bunch of countries individually grouped and together with tactical physical delusions. The experts on it. They've been fabricating conversations with people to hide it. Now, these are people associated with the interbranch. See, when they make decisions about subjects, no. They left out where and how. That's not, that's just, in other words, they just stacked countless people who, when they were pretending they could speak for integrity, after having, missed uses necessary of phrases like criminal insidiousness. If you don't use criminal insidiousness and understand criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments, or of that's what people are trying to speak about at each age, where we are actually capable, how we are actually capable of speaking for things positive, like being smart. See, they have what is smart measured and maintained hurt, sensed and hurt. If it's going to use the means that we actually have, inherent, active, progressive, relevant to the answers being told to us, that are not only just wrong, but simultaneously wrong as collusions with identities of each age of fact, human nature, simultaneously reliant upon the illusions generated through those collusions. So people should not pretend or be allowed to get away with pretending they don't understand. The revelations, the value of understanding where and how blamed on other things, others, ourselves, was the real cause of slavery. Because it's relative to what, understanding it, then we're observing it. Then there are natures, there's science taking place. See, they made science mean what it doesn't. And they made the sciences formally value theory, where and how there are and were means to use science and what is true always, not denying the slightest detail or exception. Because if you use a truth that's denying the slightest detail or exception, it's a criminal insidiousness nature of positive treatment. When they refer to the locations of computers as temporary positive or negative locations, and temporary or negative positive relationships, no anti-sequence, and as the value of what is simultaneous, and no to as the identity of the program and its container bigger than and more finite than that. Simultaneously, everything has to mimic what I read and read the rules of English grammar through. The identity of English itself, the nature of English itself, and the physics of itself as an identity of the ground. Hyper additional extension of its or anything's own identity, but only per how. Everything is an extension of the identity that is hyper simultaneous. That which is that shared conjunction to and as, that one singular shared conjunction to and as, and why and how the three, the Trinity is manifest, for example, with each species, cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall. The identities of sequence nature with this and in perception of the air and of the elements and water. We are 1/5/1/3/5 identities of sequence / simultaneous nature. Bound. So ancient snow people, yin yang, and alpha and omega go together. The two outside parts of each part of the ancient snow people's body are two distinct identities of sequence nature, as the same identity of volume, but distinctly. One left to right, parentheses, and one right to left. And then there are three automatically temporary positive plus symbols inside the ancient snow people's body parts. Now, additionally to this is the value only increasing of the question mark. And when that value is denied, that part of the ancient snow people is negative. So left to right with the ancient snow people. Oh, I forgot about the video for New York City. This is about too, though, pantheism. This is what our book's going to be about. We're going to get actors from each of the cities. And we have to do this as a species body of volume. I'm going to be a species beggar. I'm going to beg us. because in other words, because all we have to do is admit and use what is hyper evidential. It means come out of nowhere. Everyone wants to access. So they have the time treatments where the food comes out at this time at elderly homes, for example, which you cannot leave out when you're going to leave out that overt / insidiously, uh, you know, you know, used to measure and maintain that about the qualities and aspects of our and the engineering of America and of modern countries. That was overtly and / insidiously criminally foreign influenced by a breaching method and by roles with it. And through counters. Because when you're fighting things and you're making subject treatments abridged, when regardless of the cause of it and the motivations, more and more people are defending and valuing naive, fact-cheating nature defenses of that, uses of that by themselves and others. Too, this is relevant to where and how we're forced to speak through others, relevant to where and to how they got away with for so long, preventing the value only increasing of these means we have inherent active and progressive to discern the lies and the delusions of experts, of overt criminal enterprises, of private ones, and of insidiousness of people A through Z, where and how they speak through formal locations and suit and tie podiums and or counters, as is actually recorded. So this is a shock and awe, quote, shock and awe, unquote. Relevant also with the drafting of that phrase, uses of that phrase, shock and awe. It can also be used to demonstrate further relevant aspects to the World Trade Center and to world trade, to elements with that, like psychology, psychiatry, like roles with fire departments, that have roles with all kinds of self-value, negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and means where and how our countries are individually grouped in together, tactical terror from how we are by nature, demonstrated, individually grouped in together as a system by that. And as that system denied, when it's denied, it causes negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. The breaching method knew that, and it employed the only means to fathom overcoming that as roles furthering criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments that were simultaneously in collusion with that as an identity of negative value nature progression. As identity is again a relationship to simultaneous, a hyper simultaneous identity of relationship to positive and to negative simultaneously. And again, to the value of the order of what's actually sequentially unfolded, and actually how and why, before the order of anything, no matter how great or finite now. So they princes bow and fall in their receipt. Campus Marcius leads the ancient way, believe. It teaches as the wind must speak as skies. And wise ground, where space / existence, the identity that all things share. shows really what is here. Why gathered around. So this has plots, spots. Only 3 branches of government. It's not, it was easy, it's recorded how they were kept. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim, predator slash hyper predator. Same way the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And this is not with theory. They're changing what people say to theory to prevent people from listing that which is simultaneously recorded. Because they've also been attaching, they already attached more people to fake words and conversations about serious, serious things than there are streets in Hartford, Connecticut. And if you think that is inseparable from the reports of already 30 shootings in Hartford this year, then you're out of your mind. So you need to get on paper if you're going to try to protect these are formally. These are formal. This is not. They have formal complaint process and all that bullshit. Excuse my language. These are rolls of wire crimes, so that stuff is not working. In other words, they have mail crime methods. You're going to observe the FBI and other agencies how they've been involved with uses of corners of buildings and of streets, uses of cafeterias for little fact-checking nature punk tricks, magic tricks, criminally foreign influence ones though. Now, forgiveness is because way worse is involved, and also the abuses of themselves since they were kids, as is really what is recorded. New York City knows, and most people in New York City want to have demonstrated. For example, every city, I'm not leaving you out, everywhere the species body of violence is. But for example, we're going to have to organize and counter organize, because already organized is nature, but that's obfuscated. So all organized is gonna take, demonstrating what's actually recorded. Because the news media has recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They're going to pretend that this is what they're communicating. They attach me to fake conversations. Don't forget. That means they communicate with, they know way bad things that they don't know the extent of. They know that it has roles with all along Route 3. There's a Roger Suzanne involved with crimes with corners of streets all along Route 3 through time. People on and off the state judicial branch offices, on and off where he works. Now, his kids, if he has kids, and his family members are also involved with this, and where they have criminal and foreign influence uses of narratives by what people want and like to see as the personalities and their treatments of what they call positive and negative. Again, these are criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments. And they know, but they don't know to the extent. And they use that truth as a lie to pretend they don't realize that, and how that they realize when they fake emotions and narratives regarding why and how they're trying to get some subscribe people to watch their television station. They're leaving out where and how they've been roles with planting evidences at crime scenes, therefore roles with the crimes, and as roles with predicate acts, methods, and cases. When you ask which trials are about, real or made up, they're about predicate acts, methods, roles, and cases where differential criminally foreign influenced, fact-cheating nature roles were being forced by a breaching method that had roles with the laws individually grouped and together. So crazy and sick to keep everyone in one sick psychopath together, blaming other things ourselves and or others for what it caused, the breaching method. This is they put phrases like divide and conquer effectively in there to keep measured and maintained pseudo sophistication, pretended other. So we have to address, that regress that pretends it is progressive. In other words, two, how they reinvent and keep inventing to obfuscate the proper way. The words in the dictionary were revealed that way with distinct overall grouped and sub definitions. And so they have summaries of everything on. So we have to make. That's another thing we can make these YouTube collaborations videos about is making it into fun. The people we're going to do it for. We're going to do it to access means we know are available. And the only reason we have an afforded means to make every retirement home great. Yeah, in other words, we have to address the logistics of the physics that unfolded as the suburbs tactically denatured, let alone the cities, and of how they tactically effectively employed criminal insidiousness natures of means to cause positive, individually grouped and together, as they call it, economies, individually grouped together too. They left out exceptions in exception nature. They left out the proper answer to where and to how and to why our founders entertained natures of wealth that were developed on the backs of things like slavery. Because they weren't free yet. We aren't free yet. If you think that anyone spoke with passions and emotions and science simultaneously, honestly, for New York City, you are your mind, and it'll be inherent in your logic. And so we're going to address where and how the hyper microscope of non-understanding Native American history, that breaching method against them, against the colonists too, the ones that forced everyone forced even Native Americans against Native Americans, because force sustained was usage, not just of the negative value nature progressions that it caused, the breaching method, but of its roles tactically replacing the short words and the memory of the short words and their protraction with the revelations as Native American education had actually originally been manifest. It more probably and demonstrably had been way better, many ways, than we have it now. Still recorded self-value, criminally foreign influenced, and that used remotely. And that measured and maintained by a breaching method distinctly from by how through our own. All identities of sophistication. So we have to have mandated law followed, and it is not followed at all locations. All exceptions that appear to justify this by the people in the background responding to what I say on over the internet or anywhere. They have roles with the FBI, with other police forms, and military, foreign and domestic, and their family members through time involved with sequence shifts, federal rules of evidences crimes, wire crime acts and methods roles, and nature's roles. These are people on off Central Connecticut State University, involved on off the Harriet Beecher Stowe House, also with people on off Elm Streets in Weathersfield and Rocky Hill, with names involved with judges and prosecutors, with black and white female judges, with child defenders, even sexual and medical, and how other natures of organized crime also associated with the people associated with them, also demonstrated by their roles with timed predicate acts, illusions. And so regardless if they're undercover police or not, I don't know, In other words, they brought this stuff up too, attaching me to fake conversations with police equipment. There are a whole bunch of people tied to a Leahy family and to a Rick C.M. Faglione involved with. I've never seen that, him involved with it. There's a Tim O'Brien involved with their family members and their neighbors, involved with corners of the streets on a principal child defender's campus, where they have the people that lives on the corners of the street. There's a ridge, I believe it's a Ridge Road, I believe, and Wells Road, the corner, I believe it's the corner of Wells Road and Ridge Road, who has there's houses on both sides of that street, who have people who had my name used with them, who by judges and prosecutors as people involved criminally foreign influence, with a whole bunch of countries involved here, also on off campus with them, with a whole bunch of roles with this through time and uses of the roles with the on and off the corners of Highcrest Street, with names involved with predicate acts with drugs and medicines crimes, sexual crimes with against boys and girls and men and women, sickly distinctly. Now these are people with the courts. Now these are people with the prisons tied to them, and with the colleges and universities like UConn and Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University and Quinnipiac University has roles with people who've been influenced to fabricate things into databases with judges and prosecutors and medical families that and people associated with schools placements that are also involved as family members with overt areas, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and roles with timed uses of that insidiousness of people's quality of logic and fact nature's aspects A through Z when they make opinions, when they have styles of logic manifest, and where it is relevant, where and how they have overt slash insidious simultaneously um, physical delusions too formal. The experts who they and how they got away with this per roles with the news that was told to use the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. So there's a Trantolo recorded and confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with some judges and prosecutors and retired and standing interbranch and exception nature tied to them, like the military, like people involved with the prisons, people involved with the computers associated with the prisons, people associated with the computers associated with Wethersfield town offices. They have roles with Afghanistan leadership families from decades ago, where they had timed roles with predicate acts then, therefore illusions relevant also now as their roles on off Trinity College. There's a Joshua Stryker who's involved also with the deans of the campuses and with the family members of the principals, where and how he's involved with some judges and prosecutors associated also with the family members of little kids, where and how they're in the background using my name, where I had not responded, where they were strangers who sought me out and made statements in front of me, which were confessions. So I didn't have a reaction to it. This is where and how they have judges. They have a Judge Smith associated with Jeremy Grohl and a Savi Bajario, and there were a whole bunch of people tied to a Della Fera family and girlfriends and their families associated with them, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also with houses on my street involved recently and through time with the corner of Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill Drive. There's a reported home break in there and their narratives regarding the motives of it. Now I don't know. This is also they said it was reported that it was through an Asian restaurant. There is an Asian restaurant and there's a Greek restaurant through different ownerships. A Mike Pandolf and those people. There's also a Mike Levine who's also one of the people further involved with people on the child defender registry that are involved with abuses of kids on and off campuses, little illusions, trick stacking, natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, instances, roles, as people recorded collusions at other formal locations, where and how they've been interbranch, and other countries, areas of work, criminal enterprises are also involved with the names involved at the corner of Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill, with confessions that were affected to me when I was in grammar school. Now, these are also people that are pretending. See, everyone wants naturally to speak about how we naturally, you want to love, and you naturally love the people that from your area, from your, even if you don't know them, you want to love them, and they want to make exceptions. So you'll say something bad, and they'll pretend that's about you. You're like that. They want to use evidence as leaving out what comes first. Now, this is relevant to where and to how there's a certain kind of child abuse, where and how they have the kids of the interbranch and of the exception nature tied to them kept needing to hide life aggressions at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. So there's a really creepy guy named Joshua Straker who's been pretending to know me he's not even in my grade. I never had a class with him. He pretended to know me with people on and off the state judicial branch offices, people involved with the World Trade Center attack, with the World Trade Center and with the attack, put through how they're involved with the World Trade Center, with insurance companies, with lawyers who have been through time with their roles fabricating evidences, roles of where and how the courts and interbranch being and having been used remotely. It's relevant how they pull it off is uses of time treatments where they're stacking fabricated audio and video into those databases, and they're pretending they have the needs to speak for the appearances of justice, tactically ulterior from how they're supposed to be, and having been spoken for per James Madison, who wanted us not to leave out the torture method, who wanted us not to leave out the slavery method, who wanted us not to let them attach George Washington to lies, and to use punk tricks by pretending that's the evidence they see. We're pretending not to discern that which is hyper or evidential, forcing people to quote people's evidences. There is not one of them of a legitimate source. And man, my book was stolen. They'll come. They will break your means to organization. There are a whole bunch of methods of doing this, and whilst these are where the breaching method roles are manifest and discernible, there are juxtaposed motives. So they're needing to pretend to others simultaneously, and how they've been getting away with this is also discernible. Most pro se predicate acts, most pro se RICO cases, charges brought against the FBI or judges are from inside prisons. They need to pretend it looked like that. There are proofs that they may made to pretend to look like that. Hartford courts, because it wasn't like that. Because Hartford courts involved themselves with the FBI in their defendant capacities, with various natures of countries, federal criminals, and with ones from various natures of cases who are also then co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a 2006 district court case. Leading up to that and before that, they had been involved with West Hartford locations and New Britain locations and campuses involved with predicate acts, stacking evidences. They have been involved with predicate acts in legal cases. They have been involved with roles with wire crimes and mail crimes. I don't know the name of the people at the corner of the street. I know one of them is Paul Kelly. He knows my name. I don't, only reason I know that there's a Violet family that told them why, and their roles with O'Brien family. I've never seen them with the O'Brien family. and they have roles with the Faenza family. I didn't even know who they were until after I graduated high school. Maria Fazino. There were a whole bunch of men tied to her and to her husband, reportedly her husband, Stephen Stocko, who are involved with wire crimes with some judges and Wethersfield police and police forms on off the and FBI on off the state judicial branch offices and on off campuses. I never saw Maria Fazino on a Wethersfield campus in my life, too, by the way. So these are people with UConn have roles with has roles with the training of police forms, and roles with them distinctly from Central Connecticut State University. But they both have roles with uses of predicate acts, illusions, fake conversations, and evidences into databases stacked, and roles with predicate acts, methods, and cases leading up to them. Even they have roles with people associated with keeping the juries in seriously positive and negative identity treatments of their own and of other people's identities. Because you have a whole bunch of corruption and crime methods associated with it. A whole bunch of people have been involved with sequence shifts. There's a guy named Zeman who confirmed. I told him I don't want to make do with him. He tried to make he's involved with a Leahy family, with various natures of courts, judges, and prosecutors who have been stacking fake conversations with me into databases and fake evidences into databases because I caught them on off campuses before the World Trade Center attack, having affected confessions from strangers to me intercities on off campuses relevant since I was a kid. There are people, and there's girls in my time. I never had a conversation with. I never even saw them around. They were in other classes. People tied to mayor's kids and families. They have that there's a Mayor Gold and a whole bunch of people tied to a Mayor Gold and to his family who communicate they pretend passions and emotions as a means to pretend they know others with various natures of federal criminals since before they got caught. And the FBI criminally involved as defendants. Co-defendants of former director of the FBI like a Thaddeus Grabowski also confirmed and demonstrated roles with predicate acts on off the spots next to Fox Connecticut News in downtown Hartford, which is also spots next to the next to the state capitol. No, and this has something to. There's also a Chet Casper, who was brought up by doctors associated with a Yagman family as one of the families that lived next to schools. That is involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with kids, with doctors, and ones as police forms that have been planting fabricated evidences, fake uses of drugs by people, fake uses of alcohol by people, fake exceptions. They even have people that have Ray Claw was influenced to ask me to hold a cup while people associated with him involved with this pretended other years ago. There's a has something to do with their roles with Koreans and with there are Taekwondo places and people associated with Korean families in Rocky Hill and Wethersfield that are also involved with the Italian family. There's a guy in the DeMoro family that's one of the strangers that sought me out to make these confessions years ago. He has a family member. He says that wrote a book called The Growing Up Trip. Now he's involved with one of the men and women like involved in each age of their family members associated with a Abruzzi, a Mr. Abruzzi. He's involved with people with the intelligence community that are also being and having been involved with areas of work criminal enterprises and private ones. They have roles with falsifying police reports, mail crime, wire crime, natures of identity theft, frauds, and slanders instances, relevant roles, and uses of that relevant, because use of that singular is also relevant. Because there's a breaching of there's a method of criminal foreign influences relevant to where and to how styles of fact cheaping nature. got away with denying the value of where and how understanding Native Americans volume, their identity of volumes, identity of imposition by this preaching method, sickly distinctly from our own existing, and sickly distinctly. Now, when people want to pretend that they're not victims of this, it's because they're only in defenses of pseudo integrity. And there are proofs of this, but you have to follow mandated law outside of courts. Tactical ulterior, how they pretend you need to, because they caught themselves recorded since I was a little kid. So we're going to examine this. Since before the Weathersfield schools, Rocky Hill schools, New Britain schools, and Hartford schools have connections between them. East Hartford schools are already also involved with this. And both political parties with all natures of politicians and their family members. Also, family members of a Mr. Larson. I never met him. I never had a conversation. Never had just polite. There was a the main family that is involved with planting evidences behind my back and making an apparent illusion where he would say something across the street, the room from me, that were also religiously charged. He's involved with people on my area who would say religiously charged things repeated against Jewish people as crime methods roles with people who pretend to perceive prejudice in others that are also attaching others to fake words, fake locations, fake ties to others, fake natures of ties to others. They also have black and KKK themed family members involved with predicate acts, with evidences together, and with roles with the names next to schools, involved with timed identity thefts, fraud, slanders. It also has roles with fire departments, also involved with a whole bunch of different countries of natures, also effectively using those fake integrity of counters to each other and of needs to, as it means to pretend they could speak for the identity of America. In other words, we need to have demonstrated with these people reportedly dishonorably discharged from the Marines, even if that was made up. This guy's there's an officer, Jerry Miller, who brought up a Jerry Kerr. There are two Jerry Kerrs involved with shopping centers through time, one on and off Town Line Drive, and one in the Brown Turnpike, where through time a whole bunch of people have roles with predicate acts over there and on Central Connecticut State University and on child campuses and private campuses where they're attaching kids to fake locations, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties. They're planting evidences, sequence shifts, and they're preventing writing, and they're putting fake exceptions to pretend other, because there are crime methods recorded with that. So you have to follow mandated law for the Weathersfield Police and for the FBI and for the courts and for yourself if you want to make a theory here, because you understand what I'm saying. They switched names and prevented writing, and I want a response for the confessions of the principal child defender, and they fabricated audio and video and worse, when the emails with WTNH. This is also recorded. There's a Fred Grisey was implied. It looked like it might have been him. We're wearing a ninja outfit. Around the time there was a report, real or made up, of someone chopped up with a sword in New Haven. And a Fred Grisey is also with a police chief, Cintron, and 1 years ago involved with the same house and with their extended family members with relevant predicate acts and uses of them recorded. Now, even though that wasn't proven in courts, that's recorded. And that's also the people involved with the various natures of courts, family members. And now there are a whole bunch of formal roles and positions and people that work in places like Middletown and Sandy Hook that are also involved with predicate acts with the same houses that also have ties to Lanzas and to other natures of organized crime that has been going on with the kids' names and the campuses. They have all kinds of databases, crimes with the campuses, including the court's involvements with it, criminally foreign influence too, and tactically delusions raw. So we're going to examine this because there were also relevant uses of it, but there are also even more relevant. There's a singular use of it by a breaching of the method that also has that grouped in ways individually grouped and together, where the countries are shared on off the campuses they've been using to plant evidences on. So there are people that use my name on Pondside, for example, that have ties to Washington D.C. and to the World Trade Center, who are involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, pretending passions and emotions and motivations, like sick fake punks from backgrounds and trying to make fake exceptions because they have roles with wire crimes I have the police forms with, and don't pretend it's against them personally. That's another criminal thing, that criminally foreign influence thing they do. That's evidence. So make sure you get them on paper. Make sure you get a response from the online judges, like Judge Napolitano and Judge Janine Perro and Fox News involved with this. If they want to be involved criminally still, then they could do that. Otherwise, follow mandated law. Get them to one name and sequence into Branch, Connecticut right now. Make them respond for the. If they want to deny it, make them deny it. They had made a fake conversation since I was a kid, little fakes. Now I want them on paper now. Now the Mendes police and their whole family, and I want the people tied to them like the DeMorals and the others on Central Connecticut State University. And I want to know what we want to keep going with, because they brought up the identity ground locations. That's one of the things that ties them together with their confessions through time relevant and their uses of corners of streets. So make sure I get a response on paper. Now you have wire crime methods recorded with the Wethersfield police that have been fabricating audio and video transcripts to hide that. You make sure you respond to that and say sorry to the President Obama, President Trump, etc. Say sorry, fear God too, for the military playing the game. Make sure you fix the fake switching names roles and fake evidence punk games. All exceptions are in demonstration of the same thing. I asked them I attempted to sustained ways to counter a commonly as fact cheap nature perfectly, better than perfectly, what led up to, and then was observed by me and others as actually recorded in the World Trade Center attack context and in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers right before they were taken out by the same names involved since they were kids. There's conversations with the Keene family about and her narratives regarding her motivations, regarding her husband's motivations too, regarding baseball and with the kids, where they were planting evidences like that. They were spreading lies and illusions, pretending passions and emotions behind people's backs as roles with military families, on off the state judicial branch offices, as roles with locations next to it, involved with abuses of little boys and girls. Not just to help their kids, because it was abuses of their kids too, because that's how and why they are men and women now that can't afford proper science encounters to what attacked at the World Trade Center. And so we're screening at roles too. Fix the fake conversations and work with me, and how that was a part of their narrative, fake conversations with themselves about the World Trade Center and about kids. When I caught them with the Connecticut News involved with child sex offenders and other natures of abuses of kids, simultaneously, consciously, also as their roles with the corners, with the houses, names associated with houses at the corner of Main Street and Church Street in Old Weathersfield that have also through time been involved with names on and off Webhouse, with through on and off campuses, intercampuses, intercity, even private and public campuses. They've been planting little illusions in there. They've been exploiting at other identity of the ground locations, where and how the three branches of government were effectively kept and are effectively kept self-valued, criminally foreign influence, and why they are fact, cheap in nature, knaves, KNAVE, victim, predators, victim, hyper victim, hyper predators. That's relevant. That's relevant when they want to make pretended delicate or pretended hard treatments of their treatments of the values like the flag. They cannot treat communications properly. So we're going to learn about hyper communications because you have to be able to do this. We have the elections locations involve criminally foreign influence. We have it's a good cop bad cop narrative with each side pretending they're the good cop as the parties and as their exception natures. I've employed tactical ulterior from how nature uses exception nature too. No, that one identity of hyposimultaneous has value. And where and how it is increasingly valued to questions as answers is demonstration. This is so we're gonna have, all we have to do is admit these things. The means come out of nowhere. There are only like 300 something streets in Hartford, Connecticut. A whole Connecticut can make more than enough locations temporary to have everyone better than a free vacation, to make not one shooting, not just to do that for that, so we can make the nature capable. So where they have the time treatments, where they have subject treatments, the people who are the physical identities of the law, they have the complete possession, not just as, but of a pseudo sophisticated, tactically pseudo sophistication, a tactical pseudo sophistication pretending other, as a breaching screen too. Our founders left us to discuss this hyper criminal insidiousness delivery system method that is instantly the subject, that is instantly communicated by them telling us to counter slavery, that is instantly communicated by how anyone could get away with pretending not to fathom how they told us to counter slavery. Get them onto paper now. When you see word uses of of words like research, how they have been got used, you're going to be shocked. Misinformation. Of course, you have to counter misinformation online. You guys are sick rolls with it. We still have science as a bridge. We're going to come sweeping the logic of the people that have pretended to care for you. Because if you examine what is actually recorded manifest, everyone knows that there's no care for the people of New York City. It's overtly / insidiously, though. Don't forget, we're going to examine how they got away with pretending it, because there's a remote uses of all that. Criminally foreign influenced uses of it. Where and how we are quality as fact, cheap in nature, is essential. So evolution's fruits, gifts, means come from nowhere. We just got to keep it hyper real. There's a difference between real and hyper real. There are criminal insidious natures of reality treatments that were involved with the narratives that were forced as the roles of the identities distinctly to where and how it functioned. In other words, got away with pretending to be about being pretending to be capable of speaking about positive or negative or identity or anything as integrity, when such was entertained or even is entertained, even when they're shock and awe speaking about what Jim Crow laws are about. It's about criminal insidiousness nature and uses of it propagated by a breaching method that did so specific, effectively knowing that counters to it would stay self-value collusions with it. So we have advanced, only known, better than perfect, increasingly collusions between places like prisons, all people that run the computers and databases associated in campuses, they come from associated with all the interbranch and all exceptions of nature tied to them. Where everyone works, where everyone goes home, and people next to them. This is a little rap trap game where innocence is prevented voice or that person is discerned. Per the hierarchy, people see sensibilities toward hierarchies and lowerarchies, trying to defend people, as natural care for others. It doesn't work through this system. You'll constantly be used remotely. So you need to follow mandated law, and people have to be allowed to use that which is actually evidentially recorded. That's not, in other words, saying how they got away with their crime methods are recorded, used by the only three branches of government. That's a whole bunch of names, though. Then a whole bunch of names use crime methods that are fact, cheap, nature oriented. And then that progressed. There's more. They did that more times than there are streets on us, people on the streets in the cities. Evolution science works tactically to we sense when it's not being followed. See, this is other. They tell you to work. When they have narratives about work and their value treatments, you've only heard them insidious. They want us to make, uses of other people's, research. What they call research, those locations are recorded how kept criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. They are dishonest when they speak about research. So we're going to examine the criminally foreign influence uses of the identity of the ground locations, voices individually grouped in together as actually recorded. So Connecticut news companies also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with having been timed on the corner of Church Street and Main Street in Old Weathersfield in the past. And that was timed also with people. They've been extorting me in various natures of leading up to getting money with education as an educator and with boxing. This is relevant to roles with the planting evidences everywhere I go that has ties back to people who did this and who used it when I was at younger campuses. See, this method knew that people would leave out the names of others, where and how it knew that increasingly our own would be members with the whole bunch of other nations, kept needing to hide the same sequence yet find active progressive lives, with areas of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiously and criminal insidiously inherent active and increasing to the volume of opinion natures of people A through Z. For example, relative to and as the value of people's treatments of words / values like voting, the significance of it means to discern this is relative to their significance of the value of when people say mandated law is not being um, valued honestly, it's not being followed honestly. So we're going to have to examine how they make subject treatments at formal locations abridged, how they make treatments and responses to people that call them, and when they make positive or negative, because both are positive treatments and negative treatments, of our formal voices, representatives, they're only allowed to be um, categorically wrong and influenced. The wrong nature, too. Can't even defend their nature of positive treatment and afford a nature, they're pretending not just because they were going to pretend it's personal. It's not by accident. People are only if you observe what they speak about as the substance of their convictions, as CNN or as Fox News when regarding the substance and or the value of being a Democrat or being a Republican or being an independent. They have criminally foreign influence logic because they came through criminally foreign influence campuses. They have crime methods that pretend such is personal by changing what we say, by valuing having had roles with the words of others being and having been faked into databases, ties to others faked. The wrong outcome, and even when they make the right outcome in cases, their fact treatments are effectively being and having been applied as weapons, as collusions at other locations with other natures of everything from organized crime to body dumping spots to remote uses of the investigations and investigators, regardless if they get things right or not. Their campuses too. You know, you are shock and awe to a breaching method that is uncommon and unnatural to have to face. But that's what we have to face to get through to being led by, again, that which is actually science, which does not lead with theory, and which does not have to lead with theory, where we have means to have answers for us by nature itself that have been denied by sciences offensively with theory, simultaneously tactically with delusions, simultaneously tactically with other motivations, natures, needs, interests, relevant to what I caught them using parks and corners of streets and campuses databases for from behind people's backs, relevant to how they got away with this. That which is fake science is in our face, so many ways manifest. New York City, when people gather together and they riot, they have possessions of that. You know how many pseudo experts on integrity of the mind there are? How many lie progressions they have roles with, how many courts cases, and the stream of people going to the courts in New York City after coming out of one science had been truly free, we would have had, we would have opened up space means out of nowhere. People wouldn't have to be afraid to get sued and like that. In other words, we're going to work together as a species body. To do that, we have to work together as a country. The way the breaching method was forged, unfathomable. How to fathom it is by not denying how you know that we have that understanding the value of Native Americans, that how they were sickly distinctly and are sickly distinctly victims of this sick breaching method that tactically denatured the ground and earth system as our own individual grouped, as we were really grouped individually and species body of volume slash s, simultaneously sickly distinctly against everyone else. And with the color, whenever they bring up the color, they left out the breaching method. That's evidence. That's hyper evidential. People saying that they pretend they don't see significance of that, or what's the research, that's also recorded involved with evidence, hyper evidential right there, and physical delusions right there. Make sure you understand what I'm saying. Get them on paper right now. The Principal Child Defenders Campus and the Interbranch before we start asking for their kids' names, because they have their kids involved consciously too, recorded. They have a Leahy family with their kids involved too. Consciously, they attach me to fake conversations with themselves as doctors. They have their sick daughter now sicker and sicker, and she's playing the game with the other kids involved. Make sure, because they have their kids next to the houses next to the other kids they have involved with juxtaposed natures of abuses of them too through time. There are other people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with sexual and medical and other abuses of boys and girls. There's a Bobby, a girl named Bobby, and there's a man named Bobby, who I don't know if it was consciously or not, but they were confessed, demonstrated, recorded, confirmed, involved with investigators, judges, prosecutors, people involved with foreign and domestic on and off Central Connecticut State University through time that has been involved with on and off child campuses, where and how they have assessments of people based on their roles with needs for people apparently, or debatably or not, whatever, with the various natures of things that people aren't supposed to be involved with unless it's through them. See, but they've been using that to maintain cover-ups of what I caught them using the corners of streets for, and of how I caught them involved with identity thefts and frauds and slanders through time connected relevant instances. So that's why they can't get onto paper now, because I caught them with the Dillon family, who's also one of the ones involved with the names that had conversations with English teachers I had and at different ages, and had influences with them, roles with the illusions stacked in databases, relevant also to the pattern of confessions and ties to the recent reported home break-in at a reportedly Asian family, which God bless them and everyone that lives around me. I'm only bringing this up here. They're also bringing, because they have privacy, they have sequence shifting where they bring up other people's names pretending they want privacy, and or they want to keep things legitimately in backgrounds, because they've been forging names, switching names, and stacking predicate acts roles into databases and doing it directly to themselves, Weathersfield Police, since I was a kid, and with other police forms. The FBI and areas of overt criminal enterprises and private ones are involved with the same families involved with this. And they pretend such as personal and stuff from backgrounds relevant to how they've been getting away with this. So I shouldn't have to beg you, online, news judges, fix the fake news of the news predicate acts too. I'm not. I'm just quoting President Trump. I'm not quoting President Trump. I mean, that's a quote President Trump, but that's real too. I'm referring to it as news predicate acts because that's the substance of it as they were as actually recorded. They attach me to fake conversations with themselves, and as part of the substance of the many different natures of organized crime, when they're making up fake conversations. One of the things they made up was fake conversations with them and with them with about the World Trade Center. Now these are people that did this as cover-ups of what was actually recording leading up to the World Trade Center attack in Manhattan, and since, as people involved with interstates. So Vermont has roles with the intelligence community, with a Joseph Dennis, and with others with that lived near former Mayor Gold, who have roles with Vermont and other states with predicate acts with people that weren't even in my classrooms, and know how they have the class of '93, the class of etc. The class, but meanwhile you go to a different classroom, someone's in your class or not, even if they're in your class. See, there's this communication that is also relevant to where and how there is recorded conscious uses of time treatments as one of the qualities of fact treatment nature aspects in nature is used criminally for an influence at interbranch locations. Where they're timing, we're using time simultaneously too fast, too slow when they're speaking about subjects while they're simultaneously stacking illusions into databases, pretending not to be able to fathom how those illusions were already put there and spoken. So they also had a Bobby bring up an abortion, real or made up. So these are people involved with acting teachers that are implied and demonstrated associated with plainclothes police forms and uses of them, planting evidence, identity theft, frauds, criminally foreign influence, delusions, raw. They don't, that's on a mass scale originally and still. They get away with pretending people are pretending that's against the police. You have, they're leaving out exception nature. They're leaving out distinctions because they've been fabricating on a mass scale. More things than against that single individuals that are only counters, the only people we're allowed to counter in positions against ourselves, like extortion, roles with extortionists. So, they pretend they have the right to lie when they don't have the right to lie. They pretend they have the right to measure the sensibilities of people where they don't have the right to measure the sensibilities of people. Investigators in their schools and their family members also have roles again with uses of corners of streets and of parks through time relevant and of the side entrances to it. It's relevant to where and how they've been keeping things going before courts where they use time simultaneously too fast, too slow to hide their lie progressions while they're stacking more fake things into databases. Make sure they get on paper fast. Real motherfucking, excuse my language. So, New York City, we're going to make the Burles book. But that's part to make sure we keep a portion of income that can be used to keep positive, to maintain that we can keep means to seek, to sense if criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments are being persuaded to the members of our species body of volume, as it is hyperconjunctive to the game and or the plan associated as the theme of this collaboration video slash S. For example, with our cities, New York City, I had gotten interrupted before I gathered my mind and outlined it, but then I got into communications and I forgot. But one of the things is, the pamphleteers, just like, better than just like, because just like when the pamphleteers originally had to pretend that they could speak for positive or negative, unobstructed, as everyone was doing. No, everyone was forced to entertain treatments of positive and of negative, and of consciousness, and of consciousness denials that self-entertained could not entertain itself and be to speak for anyone to know and understand the identity of integrity. It could only be taught relative to the breaching method, and that's prevented. That has been prevented. No, it can only be taught until we get through. The breaching method stays relevant until we get back to the sciences that are unabridged, till we get back to the understanding and discerning the identity of relativity theorem and demonstration to us as space slash as the identity as space slash existence. We see it as a plural because we only discern an extent of it. This is one of the reasons. The extent of what we know is so, excuse me, important, but it's of relevance to what is hyperpositive, not to what is what are criminal insidious natures of positive. So you've given relevance to simple little, the significance of how computers work and the means to understand it simultaneously were gathered by others. And it was gathered by that natural by nature, but then coupled with, since before our founders were even born, that breaching method would use databases tied to all instances treatments by every individual individually grouped and together. Those laws were about regarding what people were how they were allowed to respond to each other or not. How they were forced to respond criminally, foreign influenced ways. tactically delusions wrought ways. So there's a Lombardo family, and there are families like with the name Violet that has been on and off Hartford Hospital and the locations next to it. There's a woman who was dragged to her death reportedly and dropped off on Jordan Lane, who is one of the ones involved with the Violet family on and off Hartford Hospital with predicate acts against me. Per others, I don't even know her name. In other words, just by having, in other words, with their entertaining each other's narratives and of uses of others' names. There are a whole bunch of people. There's a Yellow family, a DeMorrow family, are also families associated, and there's a Eric Jensen, who are involved with state police and other police forms and military, foreign and domestic, in areas of work, criminal enterprises, and private ones, and people that are associated with a former Mayor Gold and his kids and family, and through time they've been roles with federal rules of evidence as crimes together, timed identity theft, frauds, instances, faked exceptions pretending to know me, and people recording it, where and how that's relevant to where and how they are roles with criminally foreign influence uses of time treatments at interbranch locations, and where and how treatments of torture are relevant, where and how the overtly slash insidiously took the FBI's identity. When did they have the integrity to speak for the law, the nature of the law, or the physics of the law? Either one of those volumes regarding, having black pupils and whites of eyes, it means to know. Sometimes the rain will fall from skies, sometimes it will snow. Boxing is all at once while to and fro. So YouTube ground is a means to force that mandated law is followed, and where and how we have a course that nature demonstrates us as means to discern, as discern. Our rights have not been defended, let alone our liberties. Liberties is a right used to measure and maintain. Rights not law. You think one person who used passions to pretend they are for the nature, who has actually, who knows the people who know how to get this machinery there. You think one person spoke for nature? We have all these. We have fresh. We have means to fresh water, to control the quality of no pollution, the better qualities of fish. Ciao Italia is the name of a book, I believe, a cookbook. And the woman in it says that largemouth bass is the best tasting fish. Now that's a freshwater fish. And we have freshwater fish here, and that was a natural. I mean, most of the freshwater ponds are gone or tactically denatured other natures of bodies of water and shallower now. Not by accident. No one even realized the difference. Look at New York City. A breaching method, its identity of possession over everyone is inherent with all kinds of aspects, qualities aspects and natures to New York City as it is unfolding, having unfolded. They in your faces have this blamed on your founders and or other things, others or on selves, rather than the breaching method. Not just here, across the globe. And this is what they call sophistication. Fear. It is righteous here. Where amended laws prevent it, and you have these games and backgrounds. So we're gonna address this. I want a response for this campus now. I want a response for the Weathersfield Police Chief too, Police Chief Cintron, John Maiano, and others also confessed. Jessica Cintron, and demonstrated too. Reno Mazzucato and his sister involved with shopping centers and with federal evidences crimes with this on off intercities campuses with Wethersfield police chiefs and trying on off Elm Street locations with people on my street on and off that location through time since before they were formally at those locations with Mazzucato Bakery and with John Miano reportedly living on Elm Street now, and his conjunction to it through time, and his conjunction also with others to the shopping centers, like on off Town Line Drive, and along Route 3, there is a Mike Levine, who's also one of the ones confessed, recorded, and demonstrated by various people and means and natures involved with the child defenders on the child registry who are involved with the police forms and the foreign domestic on off Town Line Drive locations. Now make sure I get a response for them too, because they have the police forms, they have the courts, and they have they have the political family members individually grouped and together, recorded how kept used criminally foreign influence victims, but also hyper victims, but also hyper victim predator, hyper in other words, and where their confessions brought up those locations, and especially if they're supposed to hide such tied to such, because it was demonstrated part of the things that connect these people, and as roles with the houses near the Paul Kelly, and the people associated with this with uh, um, a Della Fera family, and the roles with the judges and the various natures of courts and their family members and prosecutors, with fire departments, and with other as the names involved with other countries, and with areas of overt criminal enterprises, and people yelling things out, pretending passions and emotions, who also have ties to leaderships of the campuses, recorded how used remotely relative to the uses of their sense and sensibilities tied to their kids too, because their motivations, narratives are needed to screen those actual ones there. So to discern this also is it is you being used as evidence where and how they've been preventing mandated law from being followed and by getting away with it by changing what people the words of others, by fabricating audio and video transcripts into databases, spoken, and with broadcasted wire crimes. So Central Connecticut State University and recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed police firms are recorded consciously being using with the courts and families using their investigators, and campuses remotely to hide their own personal, finite, active, progressive lies and preemptively and from things in the past. And so increasingly, these are people in intercities that are involved with other campuses criminally and already have been. So they painted themselves using the campuses in Wethersfield individually grouped and together criminally foreign influence and through time. So make sure I get a response. Don't waste any more time. There are more leaders of the schools involved with the FBI and the Attorney General with narratives regarding parents and regarding the FBI is involved criminally with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin with fabricating audio and video uses of wire crimes and with the campuses used to get people obligated to call up, and then they fabricate what they said when they call up, and they make it so they didn't say anything, and because they were told to hold on. Then they make all kind of confessions to people, and that's the only thing we communicate about, and then they pretend because we didn't make sense. This is one of the things. There's an officer Poison who was involved with men and women who have been involved with abuses of boys and girls sickly intercities through time with Central Connecticut State University. Find out, get me a picture of this officer Poison. I want to look into his soul. I want you to look into his soul and make sure he gets. Make sure you put that badge down and say sorry. Say sorry to Judge Napolitano, for example, for coming from your punk positions and backgrounds, for and get involved with this game. Make sure you get on paper, you too, you punk son of a bitch. Excuse my language. Sometimes I've put this to explicit language. You're hiding things from the kids and you're bringing up explicit things with the kids. You have the readings of statutes that are left out where you don't have the right to lie, but you use the right to lie anyway. They left out all the ways that you guys are a little bunch of psychopaths with your time treatment of what's called up to you and how things really unfolded and what really is proper and most to do about it. You guys are involved. You painted yourselves in corners. The right thing to do is to stop starting to play. Don't call people names still, especially ones that are medical, like delusions. Like there are people that have fake conversations with me with their patients and criminals that have all bunch of ties to my area's names. And now don't pretend it's personal when you brought this up, you sons of bitches. Make sure you get the fuck on paper for your ties to the World Trade Center too. Fear God for for playing these games with the victims of of the World Trade Center and with the with the victims of Sandy Hook, as the people pretended to be against such too. The courts are and people out of the state of Connecticut judicial branch offices have criminal involvements with campuses and with databases in Sandy Hook, Newtown, as names involved criminally with the states with the campuses intercities. Make sure I get a response for Rocky Hill High School too. And I want the name of that kid. Was that kid legitimate in like a class one time I went to Rocky Hill High School? Involved with the people on Fairlane Drive. So there's a number of ways the FBI and state police are criminally involved. A whole bunch of names with Middletown, including forensics locations, intercities locations through time. You fear God for bringing up the name Cololo the way you did Weathersfield Police too. Make sure you get on paper and those people for the names forging and switching, and stop playing these terror games with people's neighbors and playing forced names. You get on paper now. You get on paper now with the campuses. And I want a response for the confessions of this Bob Chase tied to tied to the Phil Claw. And I want that on paper now. And I want the names of those judges. No, you move when someone tells you when someone reports child abuses, and you watch it when you're moving for the wrong people when someone reports it, because that's what they do. They're pretending people were involved with child abuse when they caught them involved with it. You're going to see some sick motivations and methods and narratives associated where and how the foreign and domestic have been acting together criminally foreign influenced on and off campuses. Whole bunch of names on off Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University colluded also on off my street with the names involved. So fear God and don't hide the name. I want the name of that guy tied to Dylan who came to my speech class when I was a kid and brought up that corner of Carriage Hill Drive and Fairlane Drive. Fear God to play a game with describing my motivations for speaking to Weathersfield Police and FBI and courts because you made a mistake pretending you had integrity. Because then, and that's evidence. We're going to use what's hyper evidential because you guys are sick with what your evidence is treatment and what you call research. Because those research locations are also the polling locations are also recorded involved with relevant predicate acts and methods relevant. Quinnipiac University. Make sure you get a response from me for the people involved planting evidences in the past associated here relevant. And that's also tied to leaders of the principals who have their kids and leaders of the various natures of campuses who have their kids involved with uses of their sensibilities remotely through that. Make sure. And I'll show you what to do.